Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for this very special dialogue, Our Common Ground, Canadian and African Voices for Regenerative Agriculture as a Climate Solution. My name is Katie Fettis, and I'm pleased to welcome you on behalf of the Canada-Africa Partnership Network. We are a global organization dedicated to building solidarity between Canadian and African communities for a safe and healthy future and present. And I can think of few better ways to do that but then by bringing people together across two continents today to explore common challenges and share common solutions. We believe finding solutions to the challenges we face today, that includes soil degradation, food and water insecurity, forced displacement, and climate change, that this must be a truly global conversation. Today, we're calling attention to a solution to these challenges that lies right beneath our feet, and that is our soils. We're talking about the potential of regenerative agriculture to create a healthy global ecosystem, cool our planet, feed the world, and promote public health, prosperity, and peace. As we speak today about the importance of our lands and our soils and being stewards of those, I want to acknowledge that those of us joining from Canada are gathered on the ancestral lands and waters of Indigenous peoples who have left their footprints on Mother Earth before us. We respectfully acknowledge those who have walked on the earth, those who walk on the earth now, and future generations who have yet to walk upon the earth. May we gain strength and wisdom that all may continue to serve as stewards of the earth. And I'm pleased to introduce, without further ado, our moderator for today. Carl Tiedemann is the co-founder and co-director of Soil for Climate, a nonprofit organization advocating for soil restoration as a climate solution and creating a platform for farmers, scientists, journalists, policymakers, and climate activists to connect from over 100 countries. Carl's experience in the environmental laboratory field and electric vehicle industry, and he focuses on climate communications, including poetry. I couldn't think of a better person to help us guide us through this important discussion today, and passing it over to you, Carl, to get us started on this great discussion. Please enjoy, everyone, and thanks so much again for being with us today.
Thank you, Katie. Good day, everyone. As Katie mentioned, my name is Carl Tiedemann. I'm the co-founder of Soil for Climate. We're a nonprofit organization based in the United States. On our Facebook group, which I invite you to join, we have nearly 20,000 members from more than 100 countries around the world. In the last several years, soil has gained recognition as a solution not only to the climate crisis, but for solving many other issues that are currently facing us, including loss of soil fertility, erosion, water security, the extinction crisis by restoring wildlife habitat, and in general, improving people's lives by rejuvenating local economies. So it's an honor to participate in this event today, and I'm looking forward very much to it. I would like to begin by introducing a special video that has been prepared. Since this dialogue takes place as part of Global Climate Week, we'd like to start by showing this video compilation, Climate Fast, showing what a livable future looks like for all of us. Please enjoy.
Hi, my name is Faria, and a livable future for all to me means ending the increasing trend of regions becoming unlivable due to climate change and related natural disasters, which is what we're seeing in places like the city of Jakarta and the country of Bangladesh. It also means having a place for these displaced people to go if their regions are destroyed, by urging government officials in countries like Canada to consider implementing a plan in the future for these climate migrants or refugees.
Seeing record wildfires, hurricane seasons, and worldwide disasters on a near-daily basis, the climate crisis, embedded with an ongoing public health pandemic and long-standing racial injustices, are a series of waves that continually bash against the ship of the most vulnerable in our society. The pillar, Livable Futures for All means exactly that, demanding from our local, provincial, and federal governments to ensure that the health of the people, the land, the water, and the climate are cared for, protected, and supported for those being most affected by the multiple crises now and for future generations to come.
Tomorrow's a new day. I'm here standing with you, here standing with me, standing with the world on our shoulders. I'm here standing with you, here standing with me, standing with the world on our shoulders. We can plant the seeds, we can make a change right now.
Looking at my son, it breaks my heart thinking about what he and all children will face. I believe scientists, and they say we do need to act now to fight climate change. A livable future means acting on the climate crisis and no longer fund destructive industries. It means putting people before profit. It means respecting the planet. We need to be good ancestors to future generations.
Everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm Vincent with GT Riders, and we are here at the office of DJ Feni-Gonzalez, the Parliamentary Secretary and Minister of Transportation. We are here to ask for permanent provincial funding with no strings to allow people to distance safely on public transit as we return to school and to work.
To me, a livable futures for all means a society that challenges the destructive cycles of capitalism and colonialism that we are stuck in. It is a recognition of the importance of individuals and communities where the well-being of the collective is prioritized over the profits of a few. To demand a livable futures for all, we must think beyond what we know to envision a more equitable, just, and healthy future for all. We cannot go back to normal.
Thank you. Without further ado, let's move into the dialogue. We will hear from a range of speakers who will share insights on the magnitude of climate change challenges on human security and introduce a solution that lies beneath our feet, regenerative agriculture. Dr. Ratan Lal at Ohio State University, the most prominent soil scientist in the world, has estimated that by the year 2100, through ecological restoration, including regenerative agriculture, we can remove approximately 300 billion tons of carbon from the atmosphere. It's about 1 trillion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And that'll restore the CO2 level back down to pre-industrial levels and ensure that we have a stable, livable climate going forward. If you have questions for the various speakers, please write your questions in the YouTube chat box. We will be collecting questions throughout, and there will be an opportunity for question and answer and discussion with our presenters at the end of the program. Please also find in the chat box any links that our team will be sharing for each speakers and the topics under discussion. At this point, I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, Michael Collins. Michael is Co-Executive Director of the Americas with the Institute for Economics and Peace. Michael develops working partnerships with Americas-based governments, civil society organizations, foundations, universities, businesses, and think tanks. He seeks new opportunities to build IEP's presence and impact throughout the Americas, with particular focus on expanding the use of IEP's positive peace framework as a training tool and an evidence-based metric for peace-centered development. Before joining IEP, Michael oversaw educational, job creation, and economic development programs in emerging nations recovering from natural disasters. He worked frequently with communities affected by poverty and gang violence. Prior to pursuing a career in the nonprofit sector, Michael studied electrical engineering and worked in the construction industry. Michael joins us to present IEP's brand new ecological threat register, underscoring the need for bold climate action for human security. Welcome, Michael, and if you would unmute and turn on your camera, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carl. Much appreciated. I'm going to quickly share my screen here. Bear with me just a second. Excellent, thank you. And I believe you all see my screen, but if you don't, please let me know. So today I'd like to talk to you very briefly about the Ecological Threat Register. It's a new report produced by the Institute for Economics and Peace that compares countries' exposure to ecological threats to their underlying level of resilience. The object of this work is essentially to identify countries that are most at risk and where sort of resilience building efforts should be focused. And more broadly, it sort of aims to be a catalyst for resilience building activities worldwide. Of course, this includes regenerative agriculture. So we certainly hope that it can be a tool for further highlighting these efforts going forward. This is the inaugural edition of the Ecological Threat Register, and it covers 157 countries, 97% of the world's population. Those are the countries that we currently have data for, and it covers 8 areas of ecological threats, many of which relate to regenerative agriculture, many of which relate to climate change as well. So in terms of resource scarcity, specifically food security, water stress, and population growth. And then it also tracks impacts from natural disasters, from floods, droughts, cyclones, temperature rises, and sea levels. Now, the register projects out to 2050, so it provides a snapshot, essentially, of the ecological threats that the world's going to be subject to over the next 30 years. The methodology is developed by the Institute for Economics and Peace, and the the resilience measure that we use is IEP's Positive Peace Framework. Now let's delve straight into some of the key findings, which I hope will be relevant to the audience today. We find that 141 countries are exposed to at least one ecological threat between now and 2050. Now, more than half of those countries, home to 6.4 billion people, are or will be exposed to medium to high number of ecological threats. Now, 19 of those countries are going to be subject to 4 ecological threats or more, and they are currently home to over a quarter of the world's population. Now, in addition, 10 of these, more than half of these, are also in the 40 least peaceful countries on the Global Peace Index, which is another report produced by IEP. But this, among with other data that you'll see today, really reinforces the connection between sustainable living, climate change, and conflict. In the report, we generally identify 3 clusters of ecological hotspots. These are specific countries that are susceptible to collapse because they have high exposure to ecological threats and low levels of resilience. So the Sahel region from Mauritania to Somalia, the Southern African belt from Angola to Madagascar, and then the Middle East and Central Asian belt from Syria to Pakistan. Now, from this, we estimate that 1.2 billion people are at risk of displacement by 2050. Now, the 3 major immigration routes internationally are Latin America to the US and Canada, and into Europe, the Sahel, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East to Europe. Now, it should be noted that this immigration doesn't constitute by any means the largest immigration that will occur due to ecological threats. UNHCR currently estimates that only 1 in 5 people make this trek. Most of the migration will be internal, which is one more reason, I think, for obviously supporting regenerative agriculture as a means of coping. And the important thing to identify also here with regards to the research is that even without climate change, ecological threats will lead to failed states in the future as well. Climate change exacerbates, but is not the complete cause. Just a quick note of interest, out of the countries that are most at risk, only 3 of them are within the largest recipients of climate aid, which kind of sort of speaks to whether current levels of development assistance are being well placed. This is the global distribution of ecological threats. The ones in red are the ones with a higher number of ecological threats. The ones with green are the ones with the least. It's not completely representative of the potential impact. For example, Sierra Leone, 90% of the population is subject to food insecurity, whereas in Germany, for example, is also subject to one ecological threat, but that's floods, and there have practically been no fatalities at all. But so this is why it becomes really important to bring in a country's underlying level of resilience when making this analysis, and the health of the agriculture industry and food security is a key component of this. When we bring in that resilience that countries have, this map changes extremely, and we really identify in those three belts there where most of the vulnerability exists. Very briefly, these are the three routes again. Global population is projected to reach 10 billion by 2050. By the same time, the least peaceful countries on Earth will be home to an additional 1.3 billion people, and will essentially be home to more than half the world's population. 17 countries in sub-Saharan Africa will be doubling their population by 2050. So Niger, for example, is expected to increase its population by 171%. Now, what we see is that high population growth is often a reflection or a mirror image of high mortality rates. And this can be seen very well in this graph here. Now, the 20 countries with the highest mortality rates due to unsafe water, unsafe sanitation, lack of hygiene are all located in sub-Saharan Africa. And if you compare each of these graphs to where the global average is, that you see here in the middle, it's pretty spectacular and worrying. With regards to water stress, 2.6 billion people live in countries with high water stress. That is going to double by 2040. 60% less fresh water available per person today. Developed countries use 10 times more water than developing countries. The number of water-related conflicts is on the increase. And this is very quickly, because I realize I'm going past my time here, global undernourishment and water scarcity. 65% of the population in each of the world's least peaceful and low-income countries experience food affordability problems. There's a very strong correlation between food insecurity and conflict, and nearly 60% of people in sub-Saharan Africa face food insecurity. This is the highest in any region. In fact, this is broken out very briefly in this chart here, which sort of shows us the very luxurious position that we have in North America, and Europe, for example, certainly helps it put it all into context. And that's it. If you'd like additional information, I'm of course very eager to participate in the discussion today, and you can find further information in our report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. The magnitude of the problem is clear. We'd like to move along by introducing a solution through a combination of Canadian and African speakers. I'd next like to welcome to the program Kirabel Tadele. Kirabel is the Communication Officer at the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, otherwise known as AFSA. AFSA is building the largest civil society movement in Africa, positioning agroecology as an African-led solution to climate action. Kirabel is an avid Pan-African who is passionate about environmental, social justice, and human rights activism. He has over 10 years of experience in environmental advocacy and communication in both national and international NGOs. His interest is curating African narrative on food sovereignty at the center of discourses about development, environment, climate change, biocultural diversity, and social justice. Kirabel earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in English Literature from Addis Ababa University in 2005. Welcome, Kirabel.
Thank you very much, Carl, for a brief introduction. I would also like to thank the organizers for creating such a wonderful event of learning and information sharing experience. I'm also particularly privileged to share this moment with distinguished panels. Today, I'll be briefly presenting about my organizations. I am from Alliance for Sovereignty in Africa. Like Carl said, it's the biggest civil society movement in Africa today. Just to give you a brief introduction about AFSA, AFSA is launched in the year 2011 with the core purpose of creating a single and unified voice for agroecology and social food sovereignty movements in Africa. It is the biggest network of networks in Africa with over 40 active members in more than 50 African countries today. The memberships include African food producers like farmers organizations, pastoralists, fisher folks, and etc., civil society organizations, civil society networks, indigenous peoples organizations, faith-based institutions, women's groups, youth groups, and the consumer movements. So we are creating indeed a very big social civil society movement in Africa. We basically have two main objectives, two main missions. The first one is leading the fight for food sovereignty in Africa. And the other purpose that we have is driving the transition to agroecology in Africa. These are the two main core missions AFSA have. As you all know, it's really very difficult to come up with a single working definition for agroecology, partly because agroecology is a systemic response to a systemic injustice on food systems caused by industrial agriculture. But for AFSA, we try to understand agroecology like this one. I will read our understanding of agroecology. Agroecology is a people-centric system of sustainable agriculture and social justice movement driven by local farmers and other food producers to maintain power over their local food systems, protect their livelihoods and communities, and defend every African's right to nutritious and diverse food. Uniting generations of indigenous knowledge, farmers-driven science-based innovation, and an ecosystem of natural processes, agroecological food systems can adapt and even solve the climate crisis and resist the corporate control of African lands. In Africa, farmers, pastoralists, fisher folks, and communities use agroecology to sustainably steward their land, produce nourishing food that celebrates cultural heritage, and strengthen local markets and local economies. So as you can see, it's a very, very diverse issues, diverse components to agroecology. It's not only one farming system solving the food security issues in Africa. The one thing that we did good in as AFSA in Africa is we are engaged in developing case studies from across Africa on agroecology. The purpose of doing the case studies is to make an evidence-based and coherent cases for agroecology as the sustainable long-term solution for farming and climate action in Africa. If you go to our websites, these are the some of the case studies that we did so far. We have developed almost 70 case studies from across Africa on agroecology. So basically, what comes out, what stands out of the case studies that we have been engaged is, as a meta-analysis, is agroecology builds resilience to impacts of climate change. It's possible to increase production using agroecology as a farming system. Food produced within agroecology farming system is nutritious and healthy. The environment is not polluted and degraded with chemicals, fertilizers. Food produced is culturally appropriate. This is often the missing link in most of the discourses that we have on food security. It's only solving hunger, but what about creating or producing food that is culturally appropriate to people in Africa? And the other thing that comes out is farmers own their own seeds. They control their own land and their own life. Women and youth benefited from the other agroecological based income generating activities. And last but not least is agroecology contributes at least to 10 of the 17 SDGs in Africa. I'm quickly sharing you this wonderful chart that's driven from the case studies. As you can see, agroecology, most of the case studies that we did on agroecology responds almost 100% to zero hunger goals of SDGs. And almost 21 cases out of the 50 cases responds positively to climate change adaptation and mitigation efforts. And all the rest 10 goals are, the positive outcomes of agroecology Sustainable Development Goals. So we can conclude that agroecology creates regenerative farms that are able to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Agroecological farms can actively restore biodiversity, draw carbon out of the atmosphere, and put it back into the soil, and defend on-farm ecosystems from floods, extreme heat, and crop disease exacerbated by climate change. This is the generic outcome from the case studies that we did. I like this, this is agroecological illustration of agroecological local markets in Africa in times of COVID-19. People wearing masks and all diverse foods, fruits, vegetables, everything that we need for a healthy and sustainable life. As a conclusion, I would like to conclude this presentation by, telling our viewers the way forward as African food sovereignty movement. African food systems must reject industrialization and corporatizations of agriculture if they are to survive today's global shocks, reduce hunger, and improve health across the region. Climate change, economic volatility, and dangerous diseases can quickly uproot farmers from their livelihoods. Yet, strengthening the agroecology movement today, farmers will better defend themselves from these threats in the future. That would be the end of the presentation that I have. I'm really will greatly look forward to some of the questions, and I'll be glad to answer if there is any questions that comes after. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Karabel. Let's zoom in for some case studies. I'm delighted to take you on a journey around the world where we will hear from a range of individuals who understand the importance of regenerating the ground beneath us and the power of regenerative agriculture as a tool in this mission. Folks who are working on the ground every day to implement these practices on their farms and their communities. While each deals with unique challenges depending on their setting and environment, I hope you will discover the common themes between the speakers to follow as they work to restore our common ground. First, we'll go to the Northwest Territories of Canada. I'm pleased to introduce my friend Jackie Milne, the president and founder of the Northern Farm Training Institute, or NIFTY, my favorite acronym. Jackie is a local Hay River Métis woman with over 25 years of successful market gardening. She created and executed the vision for building this holistic farm and educational center to genuinely empower people to transform their lives. The NIFTY Farm Campus is designed for feeding 200 people in a remote northern community and supports a vibrant regenerative landscape while empowering Northerners to build productive local farms and thriving, healthy, resilient communities. She is the leader of the first Canadian Savory Hub, which is a global network of regenerative agriculture teachers committed to holistic management, and Jackie is a holistic management accredited professional. In November of 2016, Jackie was honored with the Meritorious Service Medal given on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen to recognize Jackie's outstanding contributions to our country. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you very much for having me here. And I really want to focus on a particular component that's very important. We can just say regenerative agriculture, okay? But our society has developed to this point to be very mechanical and method orientated. And we are right at a crossroads where we just need to take a moment and pause and look at our living planet and realize it is not a machine that has a single, broken part, and where it's more than just fixing a piece of a broken part. And holistic management, developed through Ellen Savory, is the most viable system to help guide us because it acknowledges things we separate. Okay, three-legged stool for us to succeed in stimulating planetary regeneration. Okay, Yes, we need capital. We need to have finance. We need to have healthy soil. Yes. But we also must have healthy people. Because if we have the best cooking utensils and a hot pot and organic vegetables, but everyone in the house is so depressed, they don't even get out of bed. There's no one to make the soup, and we're all going to starve. Okay. And so what I've realized is it's because of the Gaia hypothesis. We are part of a living system that has the capacity to do something a machine cannot do. It has the capacity to have a spontaneous remission occur. And this is a healing phenomena that occurs across the plane. And probably everyone knows a story of a person that had a terminal illness, and miraculously, unexplainably, the stem cells in that person's body were activated at a very large scale to heal them. And I've come to realize the equivalence of the human race is the potential stem cells for our planet. And we actually have the capacity and ability to stimulate and ignite the human energy of hope and creativity, and could be the catalyst. And so we can't separate. These things are not separate. We can't separate them. They need to be held together. And we have all the elements we need to do it. But we're working within a living system, and regeneration or regenerating the planet is really a something that is rooted in the life force process itself. And I believe we can do it, people. So that's everything.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It is indeed crucial to draw our attention to the fact that regeneration is not just about the land and about the animals, but it is about the human spirit. It is about the economy. It is very much a holistic picture that we have to take into consideration. So thank you for the work you do in this regard. Next, we'll be traveling to Kenya. It's my honor to introduce my friend Dalmas Tiampati, Soil for Climate Working Closely with Dalmas. Dalmas is the founder and executive director of the Maasai Center for Regenerative Pastoralism, a Kenya-based nonprofit which works with Maasai pastoralists to implement regenerative land management practices. Dalmas founded the Maasai Center for Regenerative Pastoralism in 2013 in response to devastating drought that wiped out almost all the community's livestock. The center works to improve degraded soils on Maasai-owned land in Kajiado County, Kenya, to provide permanent solutions to the challenges of drought, desertification, and food and water security. One of the core objectives of the resilience measures being investigated is the use of holistic planned grazing, which has been shown to regenerate grasslands that are turning into desert. Holistic planned grazing makes grasslands more resilient to drought and flooding. Dalmas joins us from his pastures in Kajiado County. Welcome, Dalmas, and if you would unmute and turn on your camera, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Carl, and all the participants. It's my pleasure to be to participate in this great conference. And I'm sorry that I was late because, as I said, I am actually in the village here, and I just had to come to a small lodge near some hill here, just to get to try to get good network connectivity. And I think my friend Carl has done a very good introduction. Yes, my name is Dalmas Tiampati, the founder and director of the Maasai Center for Regenerative Pastoralism. And I started this in 2013. There before we experienced very, very bad droughts. And we didn't know what to do as a community. And I was actually looking for the solution to the problems. And first, it was to look for the root cause of the problems that we are facing as a Maasai people. And I actually came to realize that we were facing all these problems due to land degradation. I know we have heard people talking so much about Maasai land rights, but there is no greater right than the healthy soil rights. I think we need, in as much as we treasure land and we want to have a big portion of land in our country and in Tanzania, where we are competing with the government and other interests. But it's important to think about that the soil need to be healthy for us to remain healthy as communities. So as Carla said, I am now employing holistic management to help in restoration of our grasslands. Why did I decide to use holistic management? It is because it is actually the only solution that can help us to restore big areas of land without really using a lot of money and requiring resources like tractors and other things like fertilizers and all that. So this solution to me is quite compatible to our lifestyle as a Maasai people, and it has really helped us. Since we started our project working with the Savory Institute, we got training from the Mara Hub, Maasai Savory Hub in the Mara here in Kenya, and our community members got trained, and we started a project here on holistic management. And I have decided personally as a good example and a leader of our people to be a practitioner in holistic management, to implement it in our context as a Maasai people, without, of course, ignoring our traditional grazing system and adapting, getting areas that are important to us as a community, and having a mixture of both the Western conservation science and our traditional Maasai holistic Maasai grazing system. It has really helped us. I didn't come from a background of rangeland management. I just got trained on holistic management, and I had a lot of interest because I wanted a solution that will help us to promote pastoralism, to encourage our people to continue keeping livestock, but in a manner that is sustainable to the land. And I'm happy that since we started, we have trained about 213 people, and about 300 Maasai people are actually changing their ways to graze animals in a manner that is helpful to their families and to the soil. And right now, we are helping to restore about 51,600 acres of land for our community called Idalayakutuk Maasai in Kajiado Central, in Kajiado, southern Kenya, just 30 kilometers to the border of Tanzania, where we have another northern Tanzania Maasai group. And we want to become a focal point for trainings, for demonstrations, and to promote these practices. And I'm happy we have been working with Soil for Climate. We've received a lot of support from a US nonprofit called Soil for Climate. They have really helped us in the project that we are involved here. And what I can report is that I have seen people who are really suffering, and their animals were dying like, in every drought. After every 2 years, they are now successfully engaged into regenerative pastoralism, and they're able to take their children to school and receive good money with livestock farming, and I'm happy. And we in our village actually now for like 4 years we have had grass all around the year, and I'm happy about this. There's so many things I can report about this. We are trying also to get the University of Nairobi to do for us ecological monitoring, and even the social monitoring on how the communities, people are responding to this solution. And I'm happy when they get to the field and work with us, there'll be a lot to report. So yeah, that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dalmas. I think that the work you're doing is so important, and it's helping to show that cows, rather than just be destructors of the environment, can in fact, when they're managed properly in the way that you are demonstrating, can in fact be incredibly important at healing the land and providing for water and food security. And this is a very important part of regenerative agriculture. I'd like to next go to Canada, where we'll be speaking with Paul Slom. Paul Slom is the owner of Grazing Days Farm. Paul was raised on his family's dairy farms, first in the Netherlands, then in Alberta, farms that were at the forefront of the grass-based dairy movement. His love of mathematics and science led him to study engineering at the University of Alberta. After volunteering near the Zambia-Malawi border with Engineers Without Borders for 4 years, he returned to Canada to work in Canadian food policy, and later to start his own farm to develop and showcase the ability of alternative models of agriculture to produce food for people in a way that regenerates soil and rejuvenates ecosystems while being economically viable, with the aim of providing a different model in which to base agricultural development. So welcome, Paul. If you would unmute and turn on, oh, I see you. Thank you.
Hello, it's such a pleasure to be a part of this panel. I've really enjoyed the comments of my fellow practitioners and other speakers on the panel. I've prepared some slides for today as well. So this is a picture of the farm that I run. It's called Grazing Days Farm. I farm about an hour outside of Ottawa, and we farm 300 acres and have had up to 250 cattle on those 300 acres. So before I go into the details of what we do, I wanted to quickly touch on like my own understanding of what regenerative agriculture is. And at the basis of it, it is healthy soils. So the farm that we're on has been degraded through years and years and years of industrial agriculture that just take things out of the soil and never put anything back.
Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to note that I don't think that you're sharing your screen.
Okay, sorry about that. Is that better?
Perfect.
Great, thank you. So at the foundation of that is healthy soils. And the soil is made up of many things, but one of the often overlooked things is the soil biodiversity and the soil microbes, which are really responsible for the communication and transportation of elements in the soil to our plants. So plants are rooted in one place and they can't go get get things that they need for themselves. And it's the soil microbes that actually get food and nutrients to these plants that they can't get for themselves. And the way that the plants get these microbes to work for them is through this magical element called carbon. And just a quick look at the carbon cycle in a plant. On the left-hand side, we see plants that photosynthesize. They take carbon dioxide out of the air and use sunlight with water to create sugar chains, which these plants use to create biomass and grow foliage and things above the ground, roots underground. And then a very interesting function as well is they actually create this root exudate, which is basically like a liquid sugar that the plant roots just releases into the soil to feed these microbes to go get them nutrients that the plant can't access themselves. And so what we see is that carbon is really the currency of the soil. So this is a graph that kind of shows the life cycle of a healthy plant. And the real important thing I want to showcase here is that during the grass, where the grass growth rate is at its maximum, that's where the photosynthesis is at its most, and that's where the most biomass is put on, most carbon is released into the soil, and the most carbon dioxide is captured out of the atmosphere. So in our grazing on our farm, my goal is to keep the plant in that maximum growth state as long as possible. So this is a picture of the herd. This is a picture of the grassland after the herd has come through. So we try to take about 50% of the leaf and trample the rest to cover the soil, keep the soil temperatures cool. But we only take 50% of the leaf to make sure that that plant continues to photosynthesize and capture carbon out of the atmosphere the moment we take the cattle out of that grassland. We use our pigs to get rid of weedy patches of ground that will turn into healthy pastures once we put the cattle in after the pigs. This is what grazing looks like in the winter. We continue well into December and January. As long as the cows can get their nose down through the snow to graze, we continue to graze. And then after that, we feed hay or dried grass and continue to add carbon on top of the snow, which will, here's a photo of that next spring. New grass is growing. And then within a season, we have very healthy, lush pastures. Here's a picture of all of the fields that we graze, and we mimic the natural migration patterns of the natural grazing herds in East Africa, of the wildebeests in the former prairies here in North America, of the bison. And we plan a migration pattern through our fields to mimic the natural migration of those other herds. Here's some of the science behind it. I won't go into it because I'm out of time. But anyway, this is how we try to capture carbon and regenerate our land on our farm. And there's my contact information there. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them at any point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was fascinating, and it was a pleasure to visit your farm back in 2018. Now we'll travel to Tanzania, all the way to the Zanzibar archipelago. As a small island developing nation, Zanzibar faces some of the most urgent impacts of climate change, including sea level rise, water stress, land and soil degeneration, and the resulting food insecurity. I have the honor to introduce to you a local hero who has worked for over a decade to turn this path around and empower the people of Zanzibar towards sustainable development through restoration. And just as a brief aside here, I want to encourage people, if you do have questions, to be sure to type them into the YouTube chat, if you will. So moving along, it's my honor to present to you next Mbaruk Musa Omar, Executive Director and Founder of Community Forests Pemba. He is the driving force behind its many growing accomplishments. He first gained international recognition for his leadership of innovative forest restoration, climate change restoration, and poverty reduction missions, empowering over 50,000 people across his island of Pemba. Mbaruk is above all else a people mobilizer. When he's not in meetings, he's on the ground organizing communities and working side by side with field officers to make change happen. And Brooke, if you would turn on your video and audio, we welcome you here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, facilitator. My name is Mbarku Musa Omar, and I'm Executive Director of a local organization called the Community Forest Member, and the co-founder member of that organization. Together here, I have my colleague, Sada Juma Segeja, and the Sharifu Madim as well with the Sada Segeja. So it is my pleasure, first of all, to get this opportunity. And I would like to thank you, that Canadian and Africa to organize this Zoom meeting. Also, I would like to apologize. My voice is not so good because I was suffering with the chest pain and coughing for almost more than 1 week, but now I'm recovering. If sometimes I will fail to present, okay, my colleagues, they will assist me to present some of the potential points. Our heading now today is a regenerative agriculture as a climate solution. And our goal concerned with that is to highlight soil restoration as a climate solution and the important role of sustainable agriculture. So community forest members' comprehensive community-based approach to adaptation has been focusing more on empowering people and the foundation of the enduring change. Enable beneficiaries to lead, innovate, and share locally appropriate solutions from peer to peer and from the bottom up. CFP is a program has addressed numerous cross-cutting issues, including food, water, land, and ecological restoration. Alleviating basic impediments to development while practicing climate change adaptation that empower beneficiaries in immediate and tangible ways and allow for durable long-term investment in community and ecological resilience. In particular, community forest payment to bracket CFP has over the period engaged on the following keys: intervention at the community level that promote regenerative agriculture and soil restoration as a climate change solution. Innovation and the demonstration of comprehensive arrays of adaptive, appropriate technologies. Building capacity of community-led climate change adaptation, action, and innovation. Direct engage on all levels of society, including government in project activities, and the dissemination of a scalable solution to climate change vulnerability. Among them is through a afforestation program, whereby CFP has facilitated the planting of over 2.9 million seedlings of different varieties of species, including fruit and forest trees. Additional of that, community forest member together with our international partner, together with the community, we planted more than 250,000 seedlings of mangrove species have been planted in different coastal areas of Pemba Island, where seawater intrusion caused notable soil erosion to the agricultural land. More than that, over 34,000 small-scale farmers in Pemba Island have been motivated to engage in agroforestry system from monoculture system as a means to improve soil health, fertility, and the microorganisms, and consequently improving crop production and productivity. Thirdly, CFP has facilitated the transfer of more than 112 hectares of land from public to community for conservation purpose for different areas in Pemba. This has resulted into formulation of participatory natural resources management plans, which among its objective is conservation of natural resources, including soil. Sorry. Sorry. Over a period of less than 4 years, CFP has engaged the small-scale farmers in spice culture program where over 50 hectares of comprising of vanilla, cinnamon, cardamom, black pepper, cloves, gingers, and turmeric, and the other forest and fruit trees were combined to improve soil fertility, production, and the productivity of the crops. My colleague, she want to assist me, Sada. Sorry, facilitator.
Hello, good afternoon and good evening to everyone. I am Sada, horticulture. I am Sada, the horticulture officer from Community Forest, Pemba, Tanzania. My colleague has mentioned previous activities the organization has been doing and is still continuing to practice them for sustainable agriculture and soil restoration. Currently, we are having a project which is based more on climate smart agriculture. In restoration of the soil that has been degraded due to industrial and agricultural activities, we are practicing and we are going to carry a project all over Zanzibar Island, that is the Pemba and Unguja Islands of climate smart agriculture. We are going to base on organic agriculture, organic system of cultivation. We are going to integrate agroecology and agroforestry principles in promoting the soil. In this, we are also going to involve the use of cover crops, crop diversity, and conservation agriculture. All this is to restore the soil fertility and harmonize the land, soil resources, as well as microorganisms. And in this, we are also going to promote food security by maintaining good climate and adapting the vulnerability of the climate. That way we can ensure food security to the community as well as environmental sustainability.
Thank you very much, Amber Rook, and your colleague. It was great to have that update. A pleasure to have you on today. Next, we'll be moving to our next guest. Despite the magnitude of the changes we face, you can see that solutions are possible and underway all around the world. Ensuring the viability and scale-up of these solutions requires institutional support, both in partners and funders. Since we are gathered today as an alliance of people in North America and across Africa, I now want to invite two individuals to zoom back out and share insights on the prospects of regenerative agriculture led development and movement building for systemic change and where they see the opportunities to take strides forward. First, from Canada, I'll introduce Eric Charette. Eric is co-manager at Interpares, a feminist international social justice organization based in Ottawa. Interpares, which means among equals in Latin, supports people's struggles for peace, justice, and equality overseas and in Canada. Eric works on issues related to economic justice, food sovereignty, land grabs, and agroecology, and he supports programs in Asia, Africa, and Canada. Since 2005, when he joined the organization, Eric has worked to build greater linkages among social movements for systemic change. Eric has coordinated multiple farmer-to-farmer exchanges, farmer-led and action research projects on land grabs, and the impact of new technologies in agriculture. More recently, Eric has been coordinating efforts to strengthen women-led agroecology in West Africa as a means to foster greater gender equality and food security and resilience. Eric is the co-founder of the People's Food Policy Project and was chair of the board of Food Secure Canada from 2012 to 2016. Eric now serves on the board of ETC Group and the People's Food Institute and is an active member of the Canadian Food Security Policy Group. Welcome, Eric. If you would start your camera and turn on your microphone, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thanks for that great introduction. And I'm going to share my screen because I have a presentation for you as well. So here we go. So the title for my presentation is soils and climate change, digging deeper. There we go. So thanks for introducing my organization, Inter Pares, an organization I've been working with since 2005, and that I've had the pleasure of getting to know a lot of important activists around the world that are working to promote agroecology and food sovereignty. And thanks for the excellent presentations that we've heard so far that had us travel across Africa. And I'm going to get us to travel on another continent. We're going to travel to Asia, and I want to share a story about some incredible work that we're also supporting in India. So what we've heard so far in terms of the presentations is how important it is to have healthy soils, the important role it plays in terms of biodiversity, food production, and we've also heard of the role that healthy soils can play in sequestering carbon. And maintaining healthy soils is a step in the right direction, but only if we keep walking. So here's a short story of what I mean. So let's travel for a moment to Telangana, India, where we've been working with the Deccan Development Society, or DDS, for over 20 years now. And so this is a region that suffered tremendously from hunger and from droughts. And in this region, DDS works with some of the most marginalized populations in the area, particularly Dalit women. And Dalit means the untouchable, so it's a caste in the Indian caste system. And so a population that's quite vulnerable, suffers from illiteracy, and that's been quite marginalized. And by working at the village level and organizing the women into sangams, or community-based women's organizations, these women have been able to exert more power and influence, and they've been able to gain access to land. Unfortunately, the land that was given to them was land that was quite poor quality because of Green Revolution agriculture that was carried out over decades on the land. But through the application of a lot of manure and through the planting of trees and nitrogen fixing plants such as legumes and leafy plants to build up carbon, they've actually increased and transformed the soil. So it is much healthier now, and it's producing quite a lot of varied food. And as we'll see on the next slide, they've also built up their seed diversity. So this was extremely important. They've realized that for a community to be autonomous, you need to build your own seed sovereignty. So you don't depend on foreign seeds and you don't depend on inputs as well. So they've built a big diversity of seeds and have applied a lot of agroecological techniques. And this region now that used to suffer from hunger, and that was very fragile to droughts, is actually quite a very strong food producing region with, and it is quite resilient to climate change. So some of the important work that we've done over there as well was to facilitate farmers' exchange between West Africa, where there's similar environments in terms of, we're thinking of the Sahel countries, arid conditions, and where certain foods are also very important to the local diet, such as millets and sorghums. And so here you've got a photo of a type of millet that was thought to have gone extinct in West Africa, but this farmer here, his name is Georges Tinet, actually rediscovered some seeds and planted them and started multiplying them. And they've become very important for the local diet in parts of Senegal. And these seeds were also shared with DDS. And so the fields you see in the back are the beautiful millets that's growing there. So not only are farmer-to-farmer exchanges important in terms of sharing information, knowledge, experience, but it also builds important solidarity for the struggles to maintain family farms and biodiversity going. So if we're to continue to walk in the right direction, so yes, we need to make sure that the soils are healthy, but one of the first things for that is to stop harming them in the first place. The soil, as Paul so eloquently explained, is composed of a whole bunch of microorganisms, that living biological beings that are extremely important. And unfortunately, when you expose soils to chemical fertilizers and pesticides, that affects the soil composition, the chemistry, but also the life that's contained in the soil. And so life will virtually disappear from the soil. And so we need to sustain life so that life can build soil and soil can keep nourishing us. So one of my personal heroes is, of course, the earthworm. We also need to transition away from high input agriculture to agroecology. While soils can sequester carbon, it cannot sufficiently offset the greenhouse gas emissions that are released from manufacturing and the use of chemical inputs that are used in conventional agriculture. As the National Farmers Union reminds us in their excellent report, Tackling the Farm and Climate Crisis, agriculture is not driving climate change. It's high input industrial agriculture that's driving climate change. So, for example, in Canada, the agricultural sector contributes 12% of greenhouse gas emissions, and this rate is steadily increasing. And 1/3 of those emissions actually come from the use of nitrogen-based fertilizers. So we need to transition away from high-input agriculture if we're to make a real dent in reducing emissions. And healthy soils have to play a role, but it's not sufficient. We also need to embrace low-input forms of agriculture, such as agroecology. So another thing we absolutely have to do is we have to remove the barriers that are preventing the uptake of agroecology. There's multiple studies that lay out catastrophic scenarios if we continue growing food the way we're doing. To name just a few, the IASTD, or the more recent International Panel on Climate Change land report. The overwhelming body of evidence out there explicitly states that we've reached planetary limits and we need to rapidly move away from industrial agriculture towards more sustainable food systems. So why isn't this happening? Well, the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, or IPES, mentions a series of lock-ins that are preventing the uptake of agroecology by policymakers. And so on the graph that you've got here in front of you, you can see some of these lock-ins, such as short-term thinking, compartmentalized thinking, focusing everything on exports instead of local food systems. But if you look at the graph, at the center of that is the concentration of power, where large corporations invested in high input agriculture have very deep pockets and a lot of influence. So if we're serious about tackling climate change and biodiversity loss and growing inequality, we need to address the root causes of what we're dealing with here. We need policies and incentives that reward farming that's ecological. And we also need to tackle the power imbalance that exists and break up the monopolies that seem to dictate government policymaking. I guess what I'm saying is that in addition to agroecology, we need food sovereignty. Thank you. I'd be happy to field some questions.
Thank you very much, Eric. And yes, again, if our viewers have any questions, please do type them in the YouTube chat box, and we will be happy to get to them at the end of the program. One of the important points that Eric made, I just want to reinforce, is that it's not agriculture per se that's contributing to climate change. It's industrial agriculture. Through the use of agroecology, agriculture can be a healing force of the planet. In the case of well-known regenerative farmer Gabe Brown in North Dakota, who is author of the book Dirt to Soil, he has used no synthetic fertilizer since 2007, and his farm has removed thousands of tons of carbon from the atmosphere while producing healthy food for people. It is my pleasure now to introduce our last speaker, Lauren Mascar Ngomar. He's a senior independent expert at the United Nations. He's an agro-environmentalist and development practitioner with 25 years of national and international experience in climate change, adaptation, environment, and sustainable development program formulation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Laurent has led over 80 international missions for country support and capacity building, seminars, workshops, and conferences on climate change and sustainable development, including the COPs under the United Nations Framework for the Convention of Climate Change. For the past decade, Laurent has served as a UN specialist in climate change adaptation in various capacities, including as program manager, director, chief technical advisor, national technical supervisor, and senior expert for environment, climate, and sustainable development in the SIDS and Sub-Saharan Africa. Laurent is CEO and founder of Water, Food, Energy for All, an integrated Pan-African response to climate change, and he is the global technical advisor of the Africa Climate Action Initiative. Welcome, Laurent. If you would turn on your camera and microphone. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be among the panelists, and being as well the last speaker, that means it's more a wrap-up session for me, because the most of work has been done by the great speakers that have spoke before myself. Our common ground, it's a voice from Africa based on Modex's experience in various communities in Africa, and to see what has been happening. As introduction, Africa has been suffering from many natural disasters induced by climate change and anthropic action. We know that Africa is suffering from droughts, inundation, storm attack, soil and land degradation, water and food shortages, famine, and pandemics. I think we can already pass the slide from the technical side, please. Thank you. As you see pictures, you can see on the side, they are showing us the level of degradation of land in Africa, and as well some techniques that are used in this regenerative agriculture. The following slide is telling us why a regenerative agriculture, because it's a holistic option to develop resilient agriculture. Is a method to resolve the Africa issue of famine and food shortage, is a quick response to famine in a very family context. It's a sustainable approach to climate change. It gives a coherent cohabitation between humans and the environment. It's an excellent way to restore soil and degraded land, and it is a demonstrated approach to establish water and carbon cycles in soil. I think it was Paul who has presented it very clear to us. It's as well a way for us to improve the carbon sequestration. The following slide is telling us what Africa's countries are doing. Actually, in the area of regenerative agriculture and initiatives that are ongoing in Africa, most of countries are basing the interventions on national communications. Most of them are on the third national communication, others are on the fourth, but mainly actually they are intervening on the NDCs, the National Determined Contribution from the COP21. Most of them are under review, or the NAP or the PAN. Some countries have a development plan where they have programs and projects that are trying to give a response to the negative impact of climate change, or to reduce poverty, food shortages, and water issues. The following slide is giving us an idea about the different development partners that are working in Africa. We see the UN system and the various agencies. the private sector, the bilateral, the community-based organizations, civil society organization, but as well NGOs. They are working in order to have this regenerative agriculture option on the table and keep it going as they are doing this big transformation in the continent. The following slide is the benefit for Africa. Why a regenerative agriculture? It's important because for small farm holders, it's important for them that they are able to do agriculture at that level easily, that agriculture that does not require a lot of input for quality food production. It allowed them to be ecological restoration, fight food insecurity, as well avoid anthropic action. As we know, water shortages, food shortages, energy shortages make the population to mismanage their natural resources, mainly forest. They will use it to cut wood for charcoal, or they will start using unsustainably all what they have as natural resources, and this creates this condition of degraded natural resources and create additional issues in the community. Therefore, this regenerative agriculture allows them to have a proper ecosystem restoration. The picture you can see on the right side, this one is a basin for compost preparation. We're going to have another picture later on. Okay, what African nations are expecting, as we have voices speaking from Canada and Africa, to see what they're expecting is more support and action to mobilize long-term finance and investment for sustainable development in the sector of agriculture. Most of national communication have demonstrated and said that the agriculture sector has a big impact on the greenhouse gas emission. Therefore, it's important to control the area of agriculture in order to mitigate the negative impact of climate change on the population. They need tangible measures to channel finances and investment to country and sector where they are most needed. As well, it's important to have the private sector to be involved in the context of the societal responsibility. As well, countries need help to implement the NDCs in order to respond to the convention-related engagement and commitment. And that one needs to be done through project and a program that will be supporting those vulnerable communities where water and land are degraded. Like the picture you see on the right side, it's a system where stones are used and to allow to reduce evapotranspiration, to retain water, and to do agriculture, that the tiling will not be a big option, but to avoid disturbing the soil properties. As well, it's important to support those countries to align a program and a project with the National Development Plan, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, and the African Union Agenda 2063. The other slide, what are the opportunities for climate action in Africa? The picture you can see, the one opportunity for climate action, I think it's the previous one. After expected assistance, we have the opportunity for climate action. Yes. This one, for example, you can see this one is a basin for runoff water collection. This basin is used during the rainy season. The excessive runoff water is collected in those basins, and they are used for gardening and for agriculture. the water is used for agriculture. You can see the kind of conditions and the techniques that are used to conserve water, because as you can see, the soil is very hostile for agriculture. But at the same time, they need water to produce crop. And this is one of the basins that they use to collect water. The following slide is just a proposal. Through ACAI, there is a global vision to climate change in Africa. And that global vision, it's important to see how a robust global carbon sequestration mechanism can be put in place. As we say that agriculture accounts for many percentage in the production of greenhouse gases emissions. It's important to have as well the conservation or restoration of forest ecosystem through agroecology or agroforestry. Development of policy for the conservation, protection, and preservation of forests and fragile habitats. In the Congo Basin, we are talking mainly, but in most of countries in the sub-Sahara Africa, they have similar problem. Mobilizing the resources for the development of public and private partnership. As well, the RED principle need to be applied, the development of green and sustainable production and the distribution process for donors and private investors. That at a global level. Then at continental level, which is the following slide, the vision would be to develop projects on forest. As I said earlier, population in those areas, forest dwelling population are tempted to mismanage their community forest for the simple reason there is famine, there is poverty, there is no water, there is no food. They have no alternative than to attack forest in order to survive. And they will mismanage that, and the consequences is the anthropic effect of human being on climate change. Then it's important to develop projects and a program at that level, development of partnership within African regions, how to involve the private sector investment and make sure that country can benefit all the investment that is available around the world. And finally, at national level, the vision would be to develop a sustainable financial mechanism, create mechanism for guarantee funds for public and private sector, create conditions to practice regenerative agriculture with renewable energy, land change use, and carbon sequestration to make sure that it's allowed for all of them. There is a good and coherent collaboration between farmers, herders, fishermen in the use of natural resources and community natural resources such as forests, and help countries to implement the NDCs through projects and programs. In conclusion, I would say that Africa, as we have heard across Africa, all those champions that have been working in many initiatives, Africa is ready to embark on that great journey, but that great fight as well against climate change, to practice this regenerative agriculture through program, through project, through different initiatives that can be evidence-based production for policymakers, and in order to give a very strong response to the negative impact of climate change. And we can see from now, with all the presentation, which collaboration, which network can be set in place in order to assist those different nations with different programs that will have an impact in the life of people. Thank you very much. And you will see a few pictures of degraded land that are presented in large. Here, for example, you will see degraded land how it looked like in Africa. And here you need to do agroforestry, you need to do agroecological approach in areas like this, and population need to survive. In other places, this is called a sacred forest, and they don't need to touch it, but you can see that the ecological services need to be improved, and it's only regenerative agriculture that can respond to this. The following picture, as I said, is a nursery. This is a nursery plant. I think it's Burkina Faso. It's a nursery plant in order to repopulate the degraded forest and the degraded area. The following picture is one of the regenerative agriculture technique, which is called half moon. The system allowed the water retention, reduce evapotranspiration, and reduce the runoff of water while the plants are growing up. The following picture, it's the same, it's the half moon techniques. And here, it's a water basin. This area, water basin, is created during the time of rain. Water is retained in the basin in order to be used for agriculture practices. And at the same time, this water is shared by herders, the population, and the farmers. And you can know what can happen in terms of conflict. Therefore, Africa needs support, Africa needs partners, Africa needs actors, Africa needs action in this fight against climate change.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Very much appreciate your presentation and hearing your perspective. We are running a little bit over, so I'd like to get directly into the Q&A, and then we'll briefly hear from Katie and Lynn to offer some closing remarks. One of the questions that came up, which is actually something that is quite commonly asked, is whether beef production uses too much land and water for the amount of food that it produces. And I'd just like to discuss this for a moment. Approximately 40% of the world's terrestrial area are grasslands, and grasslands co-evolved with grazing animals over tens of millions of years. And the grasslands depend on the presence of grazers to keep them alive, as much as pollinators or flowers depend on pollinators. Most food crops require anywhere from 20 to 30 inches or more of rain per year. Berries and so forth require much more rain than that. Whereas a grassland can thrive if the soil is healthy on as little as 4 inches of rain per year. So there are vast areas of the world that are not arable for farming, but can grow grass, and grazing animals can turn the grass into very helpful protein for people. And when grazing is done properly, it restores the land, it restores the habitat so that all animals, the rhinoceroses, lions, giraffes, songbirds, and other species can thrive. And this is why organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, the Union of Concerned Scientists, the National Audubon Society in Australia, WWF, and others, are now working with grazing as a way to restore these lands while providing food for the people. So livestock absolutely has an important role to play in bringing back rivers that have dried up and restoring the habitat and so forth. So in many parts of the world, it's not really an option to grow fruits and vegetables and so forth, and grains and so on that require much more rainfall. Some of the other questions that we've had are about empowering girls and women in education. And I think that that's incredibly important. Those familiar with the book Drawdown by Paul Hawken will recognize that educating women and girls is the #1 solution for addressing climate change. Another question that came up is, can we transfer agricultural production to being inside fireproof, flood-proof buildings and so on? There are absolutely many circumstances in urban areas where indoor farming can make sense. But considering that approximately half of the world's land is used for agriculture, there's no way that something like this could be done at large scale. It would just take far too much in the way of resources and there's no way we could put half of the world's land area inside of buildings for food production. So there are a couple of other questions, and I will ask our guests who are here if somebody would like to respond to this. How might one make best make the argument to move away from industrial commodity agriculture? And perhaps I would ask Eric to weigh in on this, since he did address this a little bit during his presentation. Eric, would you like to respond to this question?
Sure. And the time limit is probably 2 minutes or something.
Less than that if you can do it.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. And I think the purpose of this, my presentation, like I titled it, Digging Deeper, is because I think we do need to think deeper. We need to think in terms of root cause of issues, because the multiple crises that we're facing now, biodiversity loss, climate crisis, increasing inequality, they all have some similar root causes. There's an increasing accumulation of power and influence within a very small amount of corporations, and it's affecting our democracies as well. So our organization really fights for social justice, and we need to recognize that we need to unite our movements, the feminist movements, the ecologists, the environmentalists, racial injustice. We need to all fight together for a common future that's worth fighting for. And so when we're looking at food, just as I find that that's a very powerful way to approach these problems, because everyone has to eat. Every family has their own sort of family food policy of what we put on the table, what we don't. And so that's a very easy way that you can get involved. You can choose to not buy GMOs. You can choose to buy organic food. You can choose to buy a local food so that you get to know your farmer. You can choose to grow some of your food if you've got enough space to do it, and you can choose to share that. And so that's a powerful way to organize. You can share recipes with your neighbors. You can start organizing as a neighborhood. And here in Canada, we undertook a very interesting process called the People's Food Policy, which is basically the food movement was tired about reacting to bad policy, where a lot of the funding and the policies goes to large corporations and an agricultural system that's polluting the planet and that's making us sicker. And so instead of reacting to bad policy, we said, well, what if we imagined a food system that we wanted for Canada? What would food sovereignty look like in Canada? And so I encourage you to, and so we did. It involved, over 3,000 people from across the country. We imagined what this food system could look like, and we launched that policy idea. And now it's become a platform that a lot of the food movement across the country is using to mobilize to change policy. And so I encourage other countries to imagine their own food sovereignty policies and to really be more ambitious in terms of your goals, because time is running out.
Thank you very much, Eric. I wonder if one of our guests would like to respond to the issue of whether agroecology is compatible with capitalism. If you would raise your hand and we could bring you in. Anybody want to tackle that one? All right, Paul.
Well, I won't talk about this too much, but I believe that agroecology is in direct contrast to capitalism. I feel like as a practitioner, what I'm appreciating more and more is that through agroecology, we are harvesting nature's bounty, and we're never taking more than what nature provides to us, which is not possible in a capitalist framework where we should be taking everything we can get, which in agroecology we cannot, because there are so many other players like the microbes and the other living things that are part of the system that also need to harvest a little bit out of it in order for the system to work.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I apologize, we don't have time to get to all of the questions. I did see a note about limits to growth. And what I would like to say is that regenerative agriculture is about embracing a new paradigm. We're moving from a paradigm of scarcity based on extraction, where we're continually taking from nature, to a new paradigm of abundance, where we're giving back to nature. So with each growing season, there is more life present in the soil, more animals, more insects, more food, more water, and so forth. So in a way, as much as I greatly respect the work of the Limits of Growth authors, this really kind of turns that paradigm on its head. And I know for that reason, it can be very difficult for some to imagine the tremendous potential of this new approach. So for that, I would like to turn the program over to the co-chairs of the Africa Climate Action Initiative and Climate Fast, our co-hosts for this event. So I'd like to welcome Katie Fettis and the co-chair of Climate Fast, Lynn Adamson.
Thank you, Carl, and thanks so much, everyone. What an inspiring session. This was just food for thought. I know all the presentations were brief, but this is just the beginning of what we hope would be an ongoing dialogue of bringing people together on the North American continent, the African continent, and then beyond that, around the world. Because these are really global challenges that we're dealing with at the local level. And we're doing what we can, you know, with where we are and what we have and where we can start. But when we combine and come into dialogue with each other, then that's one way that we can start to scale it up. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And all those questions that didn't get answered, we've captured those, and we will send them on to our panelists so that they have a chance to respond to the ones that they feel that they can and would like to share on after that. But I just really want to say thank you, Dalmas, thank you, Mbaruk, thank you, Laurent, thank you, Paul, thank you, Kirabel, thank you, Eric, thank you, Jackie, thank you, Carl, for moderating. Thank you, everyone, so much for taking time out of the busy schedules that you spend restoring our lands, regenerating our planet, growing healthy food for your communities, and bringing peace, prosperity, and well-being to your communities and to our world. And so really, thanks for sharing your incredible wisdom with us and for setting the scene for the whole thing. Michael, thank you to you too. And that's research from the Institute for Economics and Peace that I think really pushes us to consider the urgency of this work. And this is a timely day, I think, for an event like this, because I want to say after we leave here tonight at 9 p.m., there's a very exciting film coming out that's called Kiss the Ground. And this is a very big day and big move for the regenerative and restoration movement. So Kiss the Ground is going to be a full-length documentary about soil restoration as a climate solution and as a solution to some of humanity's greatest challenges. As you've heard today here, it's all interconnected. And so the watch party is online tonight, free at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Just head to www.kisstheground.com and you'll find the instructions there. And just again, wanted to say thanks so much to all of you. And I will turn it over to one of our co-hosts, Lynn from Climate Fast, to bring her own remarks and to round us up.
Well, thank you thank you, Katie. I think it's absolutely remarkable webcast, and you put it together, Katie. So I want to thank you very much for that. It's really great from Climate Fast to be working with Africa Climate Action Initiative to bring civil society and nonprofit initiatives together from Canada and Africa to be in partnership and work together. So we're very happy to support this. And this is part of our Livable Futures for All Day, which is part of Climate Week. You can find out a lot more on our website, climatefast.ca. And please sign up for our e-newsletter when you're there, because we're just starting. This has got to be a turnaround decade for us. We need a green new decade. And this is the first year of it, 2020. We need to lay the foundation for the major changes that have to take place to cut our emissions and have a livable future for all. So really very pleased that everyone could join together today. Climatefast.ca, climatechallenge.ca has a calendar for the whole week and includes the Friday actions that will be happening all around the world. It's a global day. And here in Toronto, there will be a sit-in, and help is welcome for that. You can find all the details by following those websites, either climatefast.ca or climatechallenge.ca. And tonight I will say Kairos, one of our partners in doing Livable Futures for All Day, is showing a film at 7 p.m. Women Hold Up the Sky. And it's about how climate impacts women and the challenges and struggles that women are engaged in to transform our world. So the details for that are on climatefast.ca. So please look those up and have a fabulous climate week. We're all in this together. And again, thank you to Africa Climate Action Initiative and to Katie for putting this program together. We're very glad to be on together, and for a tech team for doing the work to bring it to all of you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie and Lynn. As a final wrap up, the recording of this webcast will be shared and made available on the Climate Fast and CAP Network YouTube channels. A written executive summary will also be shared. We intend to find areas for further dialogue and hope you will join us for this ongoing dialogue as we come together to highlight global solutions to today's global challenges. To join the Africa Climate Action Initiative during our upcoming fundraising initiatives for climate action in Canada and across Africa, please check our website at www.capnetwork.ca/ACAI. We hope to see you online at the links on the screen, and toast to the soil. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
We can do this. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Life begets life.
Bye.
Mhm.